Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today I want to talk about how you attach little things. How do you attach a piece of trim or some detail that you want to fix to a surface? Let's dive in and take a look at how to do this with hand tools. Now there are many options for attaching a small block down to a surface. But usually the first thing we think about is, well, standard PVA wood glue. You can just smear it on and glue it down. The problem with it is this takes a little while to set, usually about 20 minutes until it's solid. And you need a decent amount of clamping force. And so either you got to sit here holding it, or you can find some way of getting in there because you always can't get into a clamp. I'll be talking about that one here in a moment. But one other option you can get is if you move it around a little bit and you thin out the glue, and the more you move it, the more that glue starts to solidify. And eventually it's going to seize and lock up. And now it's on there. That's where it's going to be. And as long as you do it right and you leave it with just a little bit so you can kind of move it over into the right place and get it exactly where you want it, that actually works pretty well to lock a piece down there. Now it does end up usually leaving some glue schmoo around, so you want to be careful of that, but a little bit of wiggling around does work it down on. You can also get clamps, squeeze it down on, hold it in, or you could grab some tape and tape it down in place. That actually holds it pretty well. Or you could glue the block down on and hold it for 20 minutes or so until it sets up. Ain't nobody got time for that. Let's do something faster. Option number 2, and probably the one I use the most, is super glue. And this particular set is from 2P10, comes in thin, medium, thick, and gel. My most common is the medium. It just tends to work out pretty well. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. Number 1, I can apply it to this surface and put it on there and then set it down on, and 30 seconds later it's good to go. Or number 2, I could grab some activator, spray that on the wood where I want it to be, and then as soon as it sets, it's good to go. Boom. Whoop. Oh, like there, it's solid. But you want to be careful it doesn't slide that little bit. Now the nice thing about this is it's on there. It's glued. That's done. It's not going to set up anymore. So activator and super glue actually work really well. Unfortunately, there's a downside to super glue. Now this glue is incredibly strong. It's actually stronger bond than a tight bond or regular PVA initially. But tests so far are showing that it slowly degrades over time, and this will eventually become brittle and break due to the expansion contraction of the wood. And so I would rather use this for something long term, but if it's something little, this is what I'm using most of the time. So now let's move on to the best of both worlds. If I want to stick this down, and I want it to be there a long time, I want it to have a good strong hold, but I don't want to be clamping and holding it forever. So what I can do is I can put this on here, and I can smear this on and spread it out, make this everywhere I want to be, except for a little bit on the ends or a couple spots here and there. And then I'm actually going to put it in place and make sure that everything works out, smear the glue out, make sure it has a bit to spread. Then I'm going to take it off, give that air a bit of chance, and I've got this space over here that I'm going to grab some super glue. I'm going to put that on there and that on there. I'm going to put a little bit of activator here. A little bit of activator here. And now when I put this in place, it's going to be right where it needs to be, and it's going to clamp itself just like that. And so now this is glued in place. And I have the benefit of the temporary speed from the super glue as well as the permanent good strong bond from the PVA. So anytime I'm worried about the strength but ain't got time for that, mixing the two together actually works pretty well. Now it's not going to be quite as strong as having this on all surfaces of it, but sometimes it's worth that. And most of the time with little things you're attaching, you don't need all of that strength. But there is another option where you can have all of this without this. And the answer to that is a brad nailer. That's not a hand tool though. And I really don't want to take this project up to my garage where the compressor's at, so I don't want to use this. I want a hand tool brad. Thankfully, there is such a thing as a hand tool brad. And it is what you think it is. It's basically a nail, but it doesn't have any head at all. You can see how it's got a tight point on one side, and the other end is absolutely no head at all. It's a perfectly straight rod with a head, very small. But the thing that makes these special is they're very hard. They are hardened incredibly hard, and that makes them very brittle. Because the problem is if you're pounding down in, you don't want that last strike to hit the wood to bury the head. Otherwise you have to come in with a set, and then the set leaves a bigger hole. So what I can do is grab the brad. This is a piece of oak we're going into. I'm going to put it into there. I'm going to grab my safety glasses because they're hardened steel. Grab a hammer and lightly tap it down in. I'm going to put it down in a little ways. And now it's down in there. It's solid, but I have it sticking up a little ways. And with it sticking up a little ways like that, I can hit it horizontally, and because it's hard, it's going to break off just below the surface of the wood. Just like that. I've got this tiny little hole right there that basically disappears. So with these, I can use my regular PVA glue and then come in here, put it exactly where I want it, tap these down on. When they're in place, break them off, and I'm left with this almost invisible hole that is really, really nice. I like that. Now there are lots of other ways of attaching small pieces down, but these are the ways I most often use. Generally, if it's small, lightweight, and I don't really care about the strength, I'm going to use super glue. It will last, it will hold well. It's not something I'm going to put any pressure on, but it will work well. If it's something I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on, I want to make sure I'm using a good solid PVA or something that's going to hold. But that means I need something to temporarily hold it in place. Sometimes that's a super glue answer, sometimes that's the brads, sometimes it's just a piece of tape and a clamp. Sometimes you can't use brads because it's a little more detailed, but in this case, something like this, it's held in with friction. I could just use a tiny bit of super glue and it works out perfectly. Affixing little things can be a lot of fun, and they can add a lot of detail to a project, especially when you start adding trims and moldings that wrap around and finish things off. It can add a lot of detail to a project and make it really nice. I hope one or two of these were something new for you. I always like learning a new item. This was a question that came not too long ago. He was asking how to add little bits of detail here and there. And there's hundreds of different ways of doing it. I'd love to hear your ideas. If you have a way that I didn't talk about, let me know that down in the comments down below. I'd love to read through it, and who knows, I might learn something new. I always like being able to do that. So thank you for that. If you do like the channel, please hit like, comment, share, subscribe. All those things really help out and keep us going. So thank you for that. Also, everyone scrolling over here on the side, they are patrons on Patreon. And I want to say a huge thank you to them particularly, and members here on the channel, people who've clicked that join button and become members. Without you guys, this channel would not exist. So thank you for being our sponsors and supporting this channel. Without you, Wood by Wright wouldn't be here. So I think that's about it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day. So if I use a PVA glue and a brad nail, that would be a glue and brad connection. But if I used super glue and a brad nail, that would be a new adventure. Super brad!